Hey, this is Matthew Harvey with the 12 o'clock siren, recording live at the 903 Broadband Studios at Cowboy Corner on the southeast side of the downtown Leonard Square. On my left hand is James 19 Hartley.
19? As in COVID-19?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's me. I'm here. I got a joke this time.
What you got?
How do you think the unthinkable?
How do you think the unthinkable? I give up.
Icebergs.
Icebergs?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Think the unthinkable.
The Titanic wasn't.
Icebergs.
The Titanic wasn't supposed to think.
Oh, man, that got me.
Iceberg got it.
Icebergs.
I've been waiting all day for that.
Oh, that's good. Where'd you read that?
Reddit, I think.
Reddit?
Yeah.
Oh, well, wow.
Yeah.
That worked out well.
Yeah.
Reddit.
Yeah.
Cool. What you been up to?
Dude, day 427 of quarantine.
Oh, man. Dear diary.
We are practicing social distancing. Luckily, we have 6-foot-long mic cables. So
we sure do.
We are 12 feet apart.
We sure do. And a big old bottle of hand sanitizer on the table.
That I am taking part of right now.
A big old bottle of hand washing soap in the bathroom.
That's it. We got a interesting episode. You know, we're doing these call-ins because, social distancing. I think we have some firearm enthusiasts probably in our listener group.
I'm sure we do in this whole demographic area, geographic location we're in.
That's it.
Fannin County. Probably like some guns.
Yeah, so we're going to have a call-in guest, and we'll introduce her in just a second. I'm actually about to hit dial, but she is a firearms enthusiast and somewhat popular in the community, the Second Amendment community, the firearms enthusiast community. Dare I say the Liberty Movement?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So anyway,
where does she come from, and what is?
So she's worked at several of the gun ranges around, like Frisco Gun Club, and
Gotcha.
I think she is a consultant now for the Texas Gun Experience. She has a well, you know what? Let's just get her here and call. And
You want to get her on the phone?
yeah, let's do it. So we're calling here.
I am not as into guns as maybe you or the
Sure.
normal person, so I'm kind of excited to see what she has to say
Sure.
as somebody who might be getting into them soon.
Hello?
Jerah.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up, girl?
Good. What's up?
Oh, well, we're just we're up here at the old podcast studio, and just been looking forward to giving you a call. I'm here with my buddy Matthew Harvey.
Hey, Jerah, how are you?
Awesome. Man, I got no complaints.
Good to hear. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us.
Yeah, anytime.
How's your isolation going?
You know, it's a welcome break for me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, when you're actually prepared, you
Right.
don't really stress out too hard about these kind of things.
We actually had an episode on that a couple weeks ago about kind of the preparedness mindset and kind of the stress and anxiety that comes that does relieve when you're a step ahead of the curve.
This episode will actually be a really good addition to those two that we did because they had a lot of talk about gardening and just proper steps to make sure that you can survive in whatever situation.
Practical preparedness,
Yeah.
I think so. Well, we were actually kind of introducing you prior to calling you, so I thought we'd kind of start this off by, if you would, kind of give us where you're from, where you've been, where are you now, and whatnot.
Okay. I'm originally from East Texas. Moved to DFW to go to school when I was 19 and never really left. And grew up in the country. Grew up around a hunting family, so guns were never a foreign concept to me at all.
Sure.
The girls in my family usually started shooting when they were around 12. The boys around 10. And then how I got into kind of firearms as a career, I first had to get into it as a means of self-defense. So I had a stalker in my early 20s. I had somebody that tried to break in my house, was stalking me for weeks.
Goodness.
And that was kind of my first taste of what laws don't prevent.
Right.
And so it really kind of changes your mindset. And so it's actually pretty easy for me to understand why people think, oh, we ought to pass a law. You know what I mean? Because I was in, I had that mindset. And then, I said, and then, after that happened, I was like, man, if somebody's got the nuts to break into, like, come to my house,
Right.
break in my house, what would somebody do to me somewhere else, And so so that's when I kind of started getting into the self-defense game, the handgun game, started learning about different platforms. And when I was going through, that education, 15 years ago, there weren't a lot of female trainers. So I got all of my education from dudes.
Sure.
And then I had to, and then, my girlfriends, I was kind of going through this process of learning. I'd have girlfriends and, female family members go, man, I think I kind of want to learn about that. Can you take me to the range? And, after a couple of years of just kind of teaching my friends, and people in my family about it as I was going through the process, I learned that, women learn differently. This particular thing. And I said, I really want to develop curriculum for that, will help women learn and get them confident enough to train with men, because that's really where it's at. So I think, a lot of people a lot of gun ranges, a lot of trainers or whatever, they'll sell all of these ladies only classes. And that's great for like introductory style training. But there does come a point very, very soon after license to carry that you need to start being confident enough to train with anybody,
right?
Male, female, whatever, because if you don't, you're not going to get any real world experience, and you're only going to be used to being coddled. You're going to be used to being handed things, and that's not the way any of this works.
Sure.
And so I pursued handguns as a career. I started pursuing it as a career about 10 years ago.
I would assume too, I mean, probably in any industry, being kind of it's a male dominated industry for sure, right? And so that's for some people, that's probably for some women, that's probably a little I don't want to say intimidating, but you're just like, oh, here we go. I got to go in and learn in the manner that they're teaching. A lot of former military people, former law enforcement, and it might just not be as advantageous as it would be for somebody like you who've come up, you've learned it, but now you know how to speak to your own gender, so to speak.
Well, the two frustrating things, the two biggest frustrations with women and guns are these. It is for male trainers, it can be frustrating for the way women learn.
Sure.
Because we are, it's a fearful thing for us. Sometimes there are a high number of women who have had some sort of trauma related to like a weapon or a crime against their body.
Sure.
Right. And so, 325,000 women, or people, let's just say people, every year, are raped or, sexually assaulted. And that's just what's reported.
Right.
So you can imagine what's not reported. And so that's a high number of people. And so and a lot of those people are women. And so when they come in and they learn this thing, they're just naturally fearful of it. Whereas men in general think that it's just super cool.
Sure.
And so the two frustrations are male trainers trying to relate to how women learn this. And then another frustrating thing that I've come up with, and I'm going to have to call out my gender for just a second, is women are very choice at what they want to learn when it comes to guns.
Sure.
And that's frustrating. That's frustrating for a lot of people because there's so many things to learn instead of just learning how to grip the gun, learning grip, stance, sight, picture, trigger pull. There's ballistics involved. There's different parts. There's the anatomy of a firearm and how it works. There's a lot to learn about ammunition, especially when you start getting into competition shooting and different, green tips, plus P, your frangibles, like your, in introduction to handgun, you learn, hollow point versus, full metal jacket. And they think that this is all there is to know.
Right.
And they don't really get in, they don't get into the ballistics game. The thing that most people know about ballistics is what they see in Hollywood. That's not even true. And I can't tell you how many classes that I teach where I ask, okay, well, if somebody snatched your kid out of a cart in the parking lot at Walmart and shoved him in a car and started driving off with him, what would you do?
Oh.
And eight times out of 10, what do you think it is?
Start blasting.
Yeah, but where?
Oh,
but
geez.
where?
Oh, the tires.
But at what? At the tires.
Yeah.
That's 8 out of 10 people, and I'm like, it doesn't work that way. And so I bring up a YouTube video, a ballistics video, because there's a plethora of ballistics knowledge on YouTube, and it's all free for you there.
Right.
And so, but women are very choice about what they want to learn, and they think, oh, well, now I know how to point and shoot. Now I can hit my target, and that's where they stop. And that's what's frustrating about women and guns is if you're going to start it, you need to finish it. And you're truly not ever finished. But
Sure.
if you're gonna start it, you need to get yourself to some sort of advanced level, because otherwise, what have you really done?
Right.
And that, those are the obstacles.
I tell you too, it's frustrating having conversations with people who are, culturally gun aware and are somewhat, decent backyard shots at shooting skeet or shooting on the range or whatever. And then, when you're just having casual conversations about like caliber choice for self-defense, and they're like, well, I think a 22 mag's fine. And I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, well, yeah, if I put it in this guy's eye, he's going to go down. Yeah, but do you realize how much you have to train? Like, I mean, SEAL Team 6 can't do that all the time, and they spend their life on the range, and so I think some of the, and you called out your gender, I'll call out mine. I think a lot of the kind of the machismo that goes with that, and that leads me into a question is, I know you train guys too. Do you ever get the kind of the skeptical condensation of guys being like, oh, okay, I'm going to go train with this chick? Does you ever encounter that?
Very rarely anymore. It used to be a thing, and it's kind of like, it's almost like men are too confident in this ability that they don't really have yet, and women are not confident enough.
Sure, yeah.
in it, and either one can be dangerous, but in my opinion, teaching a woman is typically, bringing them into introduction to handgun is typically less dangerous, because they are actually going to listen.
Sure.
And they're going to take instruction, With men, not really so much anymore. I can probably count, maybe one time in the last couple of years I've ever had a guy just, kind of talk down to me that came in from lessons.
Sure.
It doesn't really happen that much anymore. And I think that, that just kind of goes with this whole, this women's movement that's been happening.
Sure.
That I don't 100% agree with.
But there are some benefits.
There are. I mean, I don't really like mutated feminism. I don't think there's, huge gender pay gap epidemic.
Sure.
I've never had an issue asking for what I felt like I was worth, and I've always gotten it. So
right.
And you're correct on that.
Yeah.
We support that
yeah,
too.
Now I'm not saying that there isn't the occasional employer that's sexist or whatever.
Of course.
I'm just saying that if I ask for what I feel like I'm worth and I get it, it's not really any of my business what the person next to me is making.
Yeah.
And
right.
just because, and even if they are making more, they've probably been, they probably have more experience than I do.
Sure.
And there's something to be said about that. And when a lot of people, and I won't spend too much time on this, but a lot of people, when they talk about this gender pay gap, they're not really looking at this thing as a whole. Women typically, especially up until probably the last 15 or 20 years, a lot of women didn't go and get specialized degrees. Right. So there weren't as many female doctors. There weren't as many female scientists. There weren't as many female engineers, that can command those kind of salaries. Women got a lot of general studies degrees, a lot of art degrees, a lot of, philosophy degrees and, shit like that. Things that, art degrees, things
Sure.
that don't generally pay a lot of money. And then, of course, women have babies because we're the only ones that can do that. Okay.
That's a good point.
Theoretically, I don't know. I'm hearing a lot of different stuff now, but
Some argue.
yeah.
So we have babies, and then, we stay home with those babies for a period of time, some longer than others. That presents a gap in a resume, and which results in you having less experience than the male who continue to be in the workforce. So if you take those factors into consideration, is there an issue with women making less money than men? Sometimes.
Right.
But most of the time, it's based on experience, and women just have a big chip on their shoulders about it.
Sure.
So I wanted to know, what was your relationship with firearms before the break-in stalker incident? Was that 10 years ago?
It was about 15 years ago.
Okay. What was
It
your
was about 15 years ago.
what was your like comfort level with guns then? And you said that was a kind of the linchpin to learning more.
As a self-defense mechanism.
Yeah. Gotcha. So what?
Yeah.
How did you handle weapons back then?
I was a surgeon with a shotgun. I was a competitive shotgun shooter in high school.
Okay.
Oh.
And so I always had a shotgun with me ever since I moved out of my house. I mean, all through college, I had one. I never lived on campus. So I was very comfortable having a gun in my home. I just never really, I never really sat down, in my bedroom or in my car on the way to work and had the conversation with myself, which everyone should. I never really had the conversation with myself and said, could I take a life?
Yeah.
If it's them or me, what do I do?
Sure.
And so, I had to make a decision. I mean, I didn't kill him or anything, but I was ready. And I was not afraid to grab that shotgun. And that's what it was, that's what it was there for. I just never really had the conversation with myself that was what it was there for.
Yeah,
sure.
And so it was after that I said, I'm just not going to be, you go one of two avenues when you have something like that happen to you. You either you live in fear, which means that you're never going to want to live alone. You're always going to be scared of everything. There's life experiences you're never going to have because of that fear. Or you go the completely opposite direction and go, I'm going to immerse myself in what I can do to deal with this better in the future, prevent it if I can. And that's the road I wanted to go down because I wanted to be prepared.
Right.
And you have to make that decision. And so that's just really kind of when I got, into the handgun game. And then, later on I learned about rifles, but
So what does that look like after that choice? Where do you go from there? Are you going to shoot gun ranges, taking courses to get qualified to teach?
I did. I took an introduction to handgun class over at this DFW gun range there on Mockingbird in Dallas, and then just kind of started to make my face there, just kind of started to go there, and then found a range that was closer to where I lived, which was the Bullet Trap. Cool. Over in Plano. And so I would just kind of show up. And now I will tell you, kind of backtracking a little bit to the sexism aspect of this, it was kind of a deal. It did take a while for me showing up alone at, to a gun range and not having like three guys on me, like trying to ask me if I needed help.
Yeah.
And I do understand that though, to a point.
Sure.
You do want to make sure
sales.
that, yeah, well, but you want to ensure, now I didn't really understand it then, but now having worked, in a range, running ranges, range day jobs or type stuff, you do want to make sure that you're ensuring safety.
Yeah. Sure.
And a woman, back 15 years ago, now it's much more common now, especially within the last 5 years. I mean, the demographic of women gun owners has gone up, 75%. In the last 5 years. So seeing women alone at ranges is much more common than it was 15 years ago.
Sure.
But, so it took a minute, for people to understand that, no, like, I don't need your help. I know what I'm doing. But there was a time when I didn't,
right.
And I needed the help. And so, so I didn't really ever get too offended by it.
But it was noticeable.
But it was noticeable, yeah. And so that's a thing to overcome. But I get it from the other side of the fence too, because if you're not seeing something like that all the time, you certainly want to make sure that somebody doesn't, shoot their foot off.
Sure.
So I get that too.
Well, it's like going to a gym too. There was a time when I had never stepped foot in a gym and I didn't feel confident whatsoever. Then you go in there and then you can, like, after going for a while, you can pick out the people there. Oh, he's new, she's new. Watch out for him.
Right.
You can point them the same way.
You can, yeah.
Well, so just after that intro to gun class, what was your first handgun purchase?
I went with I got a Walther PK380.
Okay.
It was my first handgun. And it was not long after that, I would say within a year after buying that gun, I decided that I got my license to carry not too long after that. And then what was a CHL back then, I guess. And I decided that was not like the best gun for me to carry on my body.
Sure.
And so I bought a little Ruger.
LCP or whatever?
That I carried, yeah. I bought a little Ruger and hated that gun. I had a lot of buyer's remorse about that gun because I bought it strictly for size. I didn't try it. And you really, at that point, there were not a lot of ranges that had these massive rental inventories either. So you really couldn't do that. But I dealt with it for a little while. And then the more that I really started to kind of learn about different guns, it takes time. And so that's one of the things that, why I create this curriculum and I create these workshops is because I want to condense the time that it takes to make the decisions that took me years to figure out.
Sure.
And so I do, a prepare and what you wear workshop, and I teach women how to conceal carry in different outfits comfortably and as preparedly as possible. There are some places that are not as ideal as others. Ankle carry is not super ideal. Purse carry is not super ideal, but there are ways that you can do it, and it is certainly better than nothing.
Just out of curiosity, how do you feel about the appendix carry?
I don't have an issue with the appendix carry. I think a lot of people overthink that, and they don't really realize, hey, as long as you have something over the trigger, it's really not that bad.
Right.
I mean, it's, now, of course, men have certain anatomical fears.
Concerns.
That, that women really don't have, and I can certainly understand that. But I mean, I appendix carry every day.
Like shooting their leg off.
Yes, exactly, Matthew.
Yeah. Yeah, that one.
So I got a question here. After you started getting involved and you started getting a little bit deeper involved in the community, what organizations have you been affiliated with? NRA. What are you affiliated with now? Kind of what's your what's the word I'm looking for there? What's your involvement with these groups and what groups are they?
I've been involved with the NRA for some time. Obviously, they're in a bit of a crisis right now, and I'm hoping that they can sort of work through that. Somebody needs to go in there and fix it, and it might just, and I might just be one of those people. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen in the future.
Can you, for our listeners who maybe not involved in the NRA, can you kind of just high level that crisis a little bit?
There's a lot of distrust with the leadership right now.
Sure.
If I'm frank, Wayne LaPierre needs to step down.
Yes, agree.
They did kind of do away with Ackerman McQueen, who was kind of running a lot of the back end stuff there, which was good. But they are, they're making funky rules for how people can run for the board now, because the board is not very diverse, and it hasn't been ever. And the board, the board is too big. It needs to be like a 30-person board and not like a 75-person board.
Right. It's getting to be like the government. It's just sprawling.
It's just too much. And then, and then, if you watch the analysis, if you follow people like Rob Pincus and organizations like Save the Second, they do a lot of this analysis on these new people that are being nominated to run. And most of the people that are on the NRA board don't show up for meetings. That's one of the things that they actually passed in the last NRA legislature, as I like to call it, is, an attendance requirement for these people. because a lot of people just aren't showing up. So there's only a fraction of the board that's actually getting things done, and then all the rest of the people are using this as like a resume feather.
Sure.
Which is
Sounds like our legislature.
Complete bullshit. Exactly. And so they don't ever show up to anything. And there's not very many women, and the women that are involved aren't doing anything. The board is, I think like 80% old white dudes. And then they turned around a couple of years ago when Antonia Okafor was trying to run, which I was really hoping she would get on. Then they made this rule that you have to be a lifetime member for at least 5 years to even be able to run for the board. And if you aren't a lifetime member, you have to get so many signatures. You have to jump through all these hoops. I mean, it's complete horseshit. And so their leadership is just totally in disarray. And the people that really care about the NRA are really calling for Wayne LaPierre to step down and for someone else to take over. Because he's just sitting there. I mean, he's just sitting pretty with a paycheck.
Oh, sure. A large one.
And what the people that care about the NRA want is, we want diversity. We want to reach minority communities and remind them that the Second Amendment is for them too. And I want to see an NRA that's going to talk about things, that's going to talk about, hey, sometimes police are wrong too. Okay.
Sure.
Not all the time. Okay. And we still need to recognize their authority, but sometimes they don't do it right either. And sometimes racism still exists and people die for no reason.
Sure.
For shitty reasons like that. And so we need to be talking about that too, and making sure that we're really educating people and not just putting out there what we want to.
Right.
Which leads me to my next question. Are you pro or against the Second Amendment?
Well, in case there was any question, I'm super pro.
All right, pro.
Second Amendment, but I'm very pro Second Amendment. But another organization outside of the NRA that you really need to be following if you're pro 2A is, the Firearms Policy Coalition. Their Instagram is @gunpolicy. They do a lot of really, really good stuff, and they're really basically becoming what the NRA should be.
I'm following that right now.
Say that one more time.
It's the Firearms Policy Coalition, and if you want to follow them on Instagram, their handle is @gunpolicy.
@gunpolicy.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Verified. All right. So when Matthew kind of jokingly asked you about the Second Amendment, but obviously you're very pro Second Amendment. What do you think? In the just for philosophical debate here, what do you think the founders put that amendment in for? Right, there's a lot of talk about that amongst the uneducated. So, what's your personal opinion on that?
It's obviously about their first concern, and I think it's pretty undisputable. Their first concern was tyrannical government, because literally they had just fought a bloodbath of a war to rid themselves of one.
Right.
To obtain freedom. Okay. I think that the biggest thing that gets misinterpreted about the Second Amendment is the part where it says a well-regulated militia.
Right.
And so gun grabbers are going to tell you, anti-gun people are going to tell you, and by the way, I think we're seeing a lot of anti-gun people become gun people over this pandemic.
I know. I was going to talk about that later.
So we'll save it for later. But this is the interpretation that I think is misconstrued the most often. They are not talking about necessarily a well-regulated militia in terms of government regulation on the militia. That is not what they're talking about. They're talking about a well-trained militia.
Right.
That's what regulated means in that sentence. And so basically what the founding fathers were saying hundreds of years ago were, hey, you're going to have a government. Like, we're still forming a government, but this is going to be different than what we came from. And so what we're saying is, you in the local government here, right? So you're going to have this local, eventually you're going to have this local, this state looking government, and then this national government, right? You local people, and I brought this up when I testified at the gun rights hearing in October over at Brookhaven College. You local people, you need to be forming these militias, and you need to be training these people on how to do this skill.
Right.
Because the militia isn't really the militia unless they know what they're doing.
Right.
Okay. So you formalize a military, you have a military, you use tax dollars to pay for it. These are the people that are going to take care of your borders. These are the people that are going to protect the country against, these foreign threats, right? Well, then you're going to need a backup to that, because another thing that they saw during this entire process was, only 3% of the colonists actually fought in the war.
Right.
So only 3% of the people that were going to benefit off of this actually put their bodies on the line for it.
Sure.
And I think that was another thing that they were probably thinking about when they wrote this, was the general populace needs to have this education so that A, they can also fight against a tyrannical government. B, they have the mindset and the cult and it's instilled in their culture to not put up with a tyrannical government. And C, they can assist the military should that ever happen. And hell, we could have seen that at Pearl Harbor.
Right. Absolutely.
There was, if the Japanese decided to take it a step further, we may have needed to call up a civilian militia to help out. But the only reason that they didn't is because the Japs aren't stupid and they knew we would fuck them up. Because we have that ability, we had that culture, we had that mindset, and back then our militias were trained.
Right. Well, and I mean, we can talk about this now, or we can talk about it in 100 years when somebody wants to come in. It'll be like Afghanistan, people will fight 1,000-year insurgency if somebody tries to invade the mainland here, and so if for that reason alone, it's great that we have, 100 million firearms out there, or whatever the stat is. You know what the stat is? That's probably right, isn't it? 100 million firearms?
I feel like it's more than that. But...
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah, I mean, no, I'm in agreement with you on 100%. And I think, they always get confused. Like you were talking about the military and the well-regulated militia. They always want to say, well, that we've got the Guard and Reserves. No, that's a branch of the military. We are the militia, It seems very apparent to me, but it's not always apparent to everyone.
It's clear to everybody.
Not so clear to everybody. All right, well, I think we beat that one pretty good. So through this, you said you grew up culturally with guns. Were you a hunter prior to even the self-defense thing? You were a competitive shotgun shooter, but did you hunt then?
I did. That was a huge tradition in my family. My grandfather was Sicilian and and then, my great-grandfather, they were all in Sicily during the Second World War.
Oh, wow.
So they were very... They came to America very pro-freedom because they were in a place where they didn't have it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
People want to scream fascism now,
Yeah, I mean, it's, you don't really understand. Like, you think you can regulate people into giving more. You think you can regulate people into being generous. I mean, that's really what, that's really kind of a little bit of what socialism is about, and why these left-leaning people want that is because they want everybody to have their quote-unquote fair share. Yeah. And but the people that were living in Sicily, during the Second World War, people that are living in Venezuela now, okay,
sure.
They are seeing that, so you talk to somebody from Venezuela. I mean, God, Gabby, you should have Gabby Franco on your podcast. She's a competitive shooter. She's a new mom. And she's from Venezuela. That is where she is from. And she will tell you, she spoke at the Second Amendment rally in DC back in November. And hers was one of the more moving speeches. I mean, and her English isn't like it, her English is good, but it's still kind of broken.
Sure.
And so to me, that made the speech even more viable.
Absolutely.
It made it hit home even more because she's literally trying to explain to you, English not being her first language, why socialism is bad. Because she came from it, she lived it, she saw how things were rationed.
Right.
She saw how powerful the government was. She saw the freedoms that other countries had, or that America had, that she was denied over there. And that's literally what she did. Is she got her Venezuelan ass over to America and started picking up guns.
Yeah, clawed her way out of there.
Yeah, and going, I can do this. So you talk to anybody you bring anybody to America, let them live here for 30 days,
right?
And ask them if they're a fan of socialism, and I promise you, they'll say no.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So,
what else did we have, Matthew? Let's see. We were talking about hunting.
We go back to that the anti-gun folk that are now turning.
Oh yeah.
Somebody was recently making light of on my Facebook page about the shelves being wiped out. And maybe these people aren't prepared enough. I said I wouldn't make too much fun of them because they might be first-time gun buyers and bullet purchasers.
Here's a great opportunity for us to make them allies going forward.
Yeah, it's a hard line though. It's because for people like us, our first instinct is to go, well, why didn't you listen? You thought we were crazy.
Right.
You thought, especially me. Okay. I mean, honestly, do you know how many like left-leaning people I've run into? A lot of my family is actually, like, a lot of my siblings are Democrats.
Oh man.
A lot, and they, like, every time I start talking about this, they're like, they're like, it's just so weird for a woman to be going out and talking about the boogaloo and to be talking about, like, and I said, man, this is the times that we're living in.
Right.
And I'm not stressed about this. You are.
Right.
Because I've got all the things I need. I got half a storage unit full of ammo and guns, right?
Right.
I'm good with it, right? Because I do just stockpile it over time, okay? And it has a pretty long shelf life,
Yep.
I got my go bag, and a lot of people ask, what do you have in your go bag? And we'll talk about that in a minute, but I want to kind of stay on course with this, so it's a fine line between I kind of want to give you a hard time for a minute because I need to tell you I told you so.
I need this.
Okay.
Yeah.
I need to tell you I told you so because this is life and death, and I need you to understand it's important.
Right.
Also, welcome to the fold.
Right.
Also, let's get you started. Now you're behind the curve a little bit on what you should already know because you spent too much time fighting it.
Right.
But yeah, I do. I think we're going to get, one of two things are going to happen. All these people that went out and panic bought are going, literally, we had people coming into Texas Gun Experience going, I don't care what it is, I just want something with a trigger.
Yeah.
And that's their little baby newborn gun brain going, right. I don't care. I just want, having no idea what it does, having no idea the ballistics behind it, having no idea the damage it could or couldn't cause, having no idea the capacities and limitations of whatever they're buying. They just want something because it makes them feel better.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's it, right? And so we do have to be careful and clever, and we do also have to be compassionate and caring about that and teach them the right way. Because a lot of people are going to have buyer's remorse after this.
Right.
So which means that people like you and I are going to be able to get these cool guns for pretty cheap.
And I am kind of excited about that. But
but we can't forget about them. We can't not continue to, like, nurture and grow them into what they need to be. But at the same time, I think it is frustrating for a lot of us that did listen when we were younger and go, I probably need to start taking this seriously.
Well, I do think, there are going to be a subset of people that have the buyer's remorse, but I think there's going to be a group of people, now how large or small is yet to be seen, but there's going to be a group of people that realize that they felt better after they got a little bit of an instruction and they can now protect their family. This pandemic goes on, people start getting hungry, they can protect their family. So assuming things get back to normal, right, and the world doesn't collapse in on itself, they're going to say, you know what, I may have been wrong about this. And we really need to put our arms around those people, and so they can be liaisons between us and the crazies over there, So that's my thought on
and
it.
we can't take it too far. We can't take it too far and shun them. You're absolutely right. We do need to bring them in and teach them.
Sure.
And teach them the right way. So that is another thing that I kind of said at the gun rights hearing. I was testifying before 20 state House representatives.
Sure.
And I was like, I was like, I wanted you to know that I researched every single one of you before I came and testified. And I went back on all your social medias for the last 2 years. And none of you, not one of you, even the ones that are pro Second Amendment, have ever publicly encouraged the citizens of your district to gain for themselves a defense and firearms education to combat active shooter situations. Like, you've never done it, because this is what we were talking about. We were talking about active shooter. We were talking about, safety of communities and things like that. I was like, the only thing that you need to understand is that simple physics dictates that the only people that are ever going to be able to purposefully respond to these kind of situations are the people who are already there.
Right. Well, we see it every day. We see it, not every day, but we see the headlines. The media tries to squash them a little bit, but good guys with a gun stop crimes all the time. All the time.
All the time. And so it doesn't make any sense. If you want help to get rid of this issue, you need to start empowering the civilian gun owner. And it's not just about the gun education. It's about the mindset education. It's about reminding people to be kind, reminding people to talk instead of fight, these kind of things, because it does hurt us when you have people shooting each other over parking spaces.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And we got to speak out against that too. And we've got to make sure that we're not just, oh, he's a gun owner, he's on our side. Just because you own a gun doesn't mean that we're on the same side.
Oh, there's plenty of idiots out there. Absolutely.
Not at all.
A while ago, while I said, assuming this everything gets back to normal and we don't collapse. Let's do the flip side here. Let's say things get pretty dicey and you've realized you got to get out of the Metroplex. What's your boog loadout look like? What are you heading out of town with?
Man, I got we were lucky. I have toilet paper and paper towels on like Amazon order.
Yeah.
So that stuff was on bulk delivery before any of this ever went down. So my house was pretty good.
Very nice.
On the stockpile of TP. No, my go bag I actually added some things to my go bag. I watched so Kevin Dixie and Argo J are two people that I follow on Instagram who have become friends of mine, and they're trainers. One lives in Wisconsin and one lives in Missouri. And they actually did an entire 1 hour Instagram live on what should be in your bug out bag.
Cool. Awesome.
And I had a lot of stuff that was already in there, but I added a few things. So I've got binoculars, obviously my guns, ammo, holsters, things like that.
What firearms are you walking out with? Are you an AR or an AK girl?
Nope. I've got a Springfield Saint, and I've got 3 shotguns. I've got a Beretta. I have a Siren, which is really the one that I go and shoot sporting clays with, because Sirens are made. They're a Cesar Guarini company. And they make shotguns for women and are anatomical obstacles.
Nice.
Yeah. And then I've got, I've got like 5 or 6 handguns that are in the GPS bag ready to go with, all my gun cleaning supplies, extra parts. And that's one thing that a lot of people don't think about.
Yeah.
Is, if you don't know where you're going to be, if you got a bug out and you don't know where you're going to be for the next few weeks, what are you going to do if one of your guns breaks?
Yeah. Throw it at somebody.
Do you got extra parts for it to be able to fix it? Definitely want to take your gun cleaning supplies. I've got several knives in my bug out bag for different things. I've got just a regular old, utilitarian knife, and then you've got to have your field knives for cleaning game and
Sure.
fish and things like that. So I've got a set of knives. I've got about 2 weeks worth of MREs, glow sticks, flashlights, fire starters. I've got a first aid kit and an IFAK with the chest seals, tourniquet, shears, the packing gauze, all that kind of stuff. The hemostatic agent, you want to have all that.
Like it.
You need a Sharpie. There's a few more things I want to go over too. You need a Sharpie. A lot of people don't have Sharpies in their go bags. And if you're not, from a medical standpoint, if you have to put a tourniquet on somebody, you have to have something to write down the time that you put the tourniquet on.
That's a good point. I may or may not have a Sharpie in mind. Might need to go check.
Because if you can save the leg or the arm, I mean, you want to do that, and you're not really going to be able to know unless you know how long that tourniquet's been on there, so that you can convey that information to medical professionals. Tweezers. A lot of people do not have tweezers in their go bag, and that is so good for so many things.
Yeah.
And then I've got a range finder in mine, and I have gray gloves. This was one thing I learned from the podcast that Katie and Argo J did, was a lot of people have black gloves in their go bag, and you're not going to be able to see how much blood you have on your hands with black gloves. So you need to get gray gloves, or like spike gloves or something like that. You need a lighter color glove so you can really see how much is going on there.
Sure.
Okay. And that was a really cool thing that I learned. And then game calls for hunting. I got game calls.
Oh, that's a good idea. I didn't think about that.
Yeah. So,
nice.
And then also for my AR, I have probably about 6 10-round magazines and about 10 30-round magazines. And here's why: because if you have to get that thing up on a bipod with all your gear on, you're probably not going to be able to stand it upright with a 30-round mag. So the 10-round mags will come in handy for that.
Something to think about.
Solid advice.
I'm making notes here.
So you've got $20,000. What are you going to go out and buy tomorrow?
Gun-wise.
Gun-wise, yes.
Or experience. Okay.
Yeah.
I've got $20,000.
Is that enough?
And
I may be off base.
It's enough. Maybe.
No,
I
mean, I could get several of the things I want. I'd go get a Modern Outfitters PDW with the screw-on can. Those things like fold up and fit into a backpack. Man, they're pretty sweet.
Like the have you ever seen the Wind River Vanquish? Ever seen that?
No, I haven't. No.
I saw it at a gun show in Frisco several years ago, and then it actually made an appearance in one of the Bourne movies, the one with Jeremy Renner, and it goes in a backpack, and it's a pretty sweet deal. Just check it out. Wind River.
I'd get that. That's about 4,000, I think, 3,000 or 4,000, and then I'd probably, just for funsies, I'd probably want to get a Rock Island 22 TCM, because those are really fun varmint hunting pistols. And if you've never shot 22 TCM, have you shot it?
I have not. I have not.
Okay. So Arms Corps is the only company that I know of that actually makes the 22 TCM round. And what it is it's a 22 projectile in a 9mm casing.
Oh.
And
it's fast.
when you buy a 1911 Rock Island that's chambered in 22 TCM, they actually give you 2 barrels with it.
Oh.
And one is the 22 TCM barrel, and then you can convert it into just a regular 9mm.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah, it's pretty sweet. And but it's just this 22 projectile that's coming out at the velocity of a 9mm, and so you can go hunt like prairie dogs with it and stuff. Super fun.
That's cool.
And so it's just a fun little varmint hunting pistol. And then I'd probably get I don't have a guide gun. Like I don't have like a lever action 4570. I've always kind of wanted one of those. And I'd probably definitely have to get me like a Cabot or a Wilson Combat.
Yeah, those are.
And I think that's gonna about do it. I think that's gonna about take up to $20,000.
Cha-ching.
Yeah. Well, so you've been involved in with Texas Gun Experience and several different organizations and stuff. You've had some pretty cool experiences. I know you do do you still do like an annual dove hunt? Or anything like that? What's some of the cooler experiences that's come your way since being involved in this kind of community?
Yeah, I host. I do host my opening weekend dove hunt. I've been doing that for 12 years. I've gotten to shoot with some legendary people. I've John Wayne Walding. I've gotten to shoot with him. And he is, man, if there was ever a dude that just was born to be in the military and be a hero, It's that guy.
Really?
Oh my God. He was born on the 4th of July. He's a Green Beret. He lost his leg in Fallujah, and he's just legendary.
Just
He's
a hard
such cool
dude, huh?
Man, he's so great, and he's really become a super cool voice for veterans. I got to meet and shoot with Scott O'Grady.
Oh, wow,
who
yeah.
is they made the
F-16
movie
pilot?
Behind Enemy. Yeah, they made the movie Behind Enemy Lines about him.
Huh.
And he was super great. So just kind of, it's really been more about the awesome people that I've gotten to meet. But some cool experiences, man. I got to go on this kind of dual action helicopter day where I got to go and like shoot a field course out of a helicopter.
Oh, wow.
On one side of this area, and then we went to the other side and we got to hunt pigs.
Oh, cool.
From the helicopter, and that's a pretty once in a lifetime.
Yeah, us regular people can't afford that.
Yeah.
It's expensive.
I got to sit down and smoke cigars with Chris Barrett, who now runs Barrett Firearms. I believe his dad started Barrett Firearms. Right. So I really, I got to like hear him and like his kind of story and the things that interest him. And, I've gotten to do, I was just invited on Lieutenant Colonel Alan West's, Facebook Live. He wanted to talk about preparedness and asked me to, do it with him. And I was super honored to do that because that guy's like the king of preparedness.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Alan West, actually.
And he's a super nice guy. Did you know? Oh, so then I'm going to tell you something that's going to make you really jealous. He gave me a Desert Eagle for my birthday.
Oh my gosh, Jerah.
I know, I'm so excited.
God.
Yes, he gifted me a Desert Eagle for my birthday. So I'm pretty stoked about that.
Now, is it in the .50 or is it what caliber is it?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's the real one.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Excellent.
That is great. You said cigars, and I know you're a whiskey and cigar girl, and I'm a whiskey and cigar girl myself.
You are.
Yeah. What whiskey are you on right now?
Man, I found some bourbon treasures yesterday on my birthday.
Oh, I saw a picture of that. I think.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was going to pick up tacos in Fort Worth. I was starving. And I came out of the taco joint, and there was this huge liquor store right next door. And I thought, man, I'm gonna go by there and see what they might have. And I found some stuff that I needed to just replace. Like Michter Small Batch and
sure.
And then my Woodford Double Oaked, which is kind of like my go-to table bourbon. So I picked those up, and then I happened to like mosey on to the other corner, and I was like, hey, what do you guys got in the secret stash? And she was like, well, come back and take a look. And man, they had some orphan bottles, some orphan barrels back there. And then they had 3 bottles of Blanton's and some Eagle Rare.
Nice.
And so I picked those up too. And then I found my favorite Bird Dog Small Batch.
Never actually had the Bird Dog.
I don't think I've either.
Yeah, never
the
had.
Bird Dog, the Bird Dog series is actually very affordable and very good. But the Green Label Small Batch with the Dark Lab on it is my favorite out of that collection. But it's good. It's only, it's less than $40 a bottle. And so it's a really good go-to table bourbon too. So I picked up, I got me like some Bland tons. So that's what I'm on right now, is the Blantons. I'm actually, honestly, I'm lying. That's not what I'm on right now. I'm actually drinking an old fashioned right now with Buffalo Trace, and then I'll be on the Blantons.
There you go.
Cheers to that.
What's your cigar of choice right now?
I'm on the Macau series.
Haven't
heard
had
of
that.
these. Well, okay, so I will tell you that last week I ran down to Silverleaf in Fort Worth and found some Andalusian Bulls, which are the hardest cigar to get in the world right now. But I picked up 3 of those.
That's awesome.
And they're a fantastic smoke, but they're like a 3-hour smoke.
Oh, yeah.
So
I don't got time for that. That's a
pretty
commitment.
big cigar.
It's a long smoke.
That's a commitment.
I'm kind of Johnny
but I
come
got
lately
some.
to the cigar world, and I'm kind of still on the like Liga Privada train. Like I like the number 9s and the T52s.
They're my go-to.
Yeah, they're good.
The Liga Nines have been my go-to forever. I love Ashton. I love my father's cigars. The Judge is
Yes.
probably my favorite out of that. But right now I'm on the McAuliffe train. So Al McAuliffe came out with his own line of cigars about 3 years ago, and I'm an ambassador for him too. And I'm on the Magdalias are probably my favorite, especially for the money. Because they're not like super expensive stick, but his Reserva is like $40 stick and it's delicious.
Yeah.
But the Magdalias he's got a little tiny, probably 40-minute smoke, and then he's got them in a larger size. It'll probably be like an hour and a half smoke, 2-hour smoke, and I think they're like maybe $12-13 a stick, and then the small ones are like 8 or 9.
Nice.
But you can't go wrong with Davidoffs either. The signature.
Yeah, I like those,
know,
and Padrones. I'm a Padrone fan. It's kind of hard to beat those two.
I like Padrone. I'm a Camacho fan too. So I bought up the last half of the 2005 Liberty Series box that they had over there, and I have one left. And then I was actually in St. Louis meeting with Kevin Dixie for this big train and learn gun event that we're doing in May. And I found they had a half a box of diplomas.
Oh wow!
And the guy said, we're phasing Camacho out of here, so I'm selling them at half price. And so the diplomas are like $20 a stick.
Right.
So yeah. I said, I'll just take the whole damn box.
I'll take them all off your hands.
So there's like 7 or 8 of them left, and I said, I'll just take them, for $10 a stick. Are you kidding me? So
right.
The humidor's pretty full right now. Although I will tell you, the other night I smoked a Psycho, and it was amazing.
Never done that.
I'd never had one, and somebody gave me one as a gift for training them, and I'd been in my humidor for about 3 months, and I just picked it up and smoked it the other night.
Man,
right.
Getting good cigars and Desert Eagles for gifts. I got to hang out in your circle.
Doing well.
I got a birthday coming up here in a few months.
Yeah.
So, Jerah, we can find you at the Texas Gun Experience. Is that right?
Yeah.
Under
definitely
normal circumstances, of course.
Yeah. Definitely follow them on Instagram. Their handle's the same on Instagram and Facebook. It's at Texas Gun Experience. I also have a training company of my own called Clearing the Chamber. So I go to different gun ranges around the state, the country, to train women and youth. So you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Clearing the Chamber. I also have a nonprofit where I raise money to teach low-income women and single moms defense and how to shoot. So it's called WADE. It's the Women's Awareness and Defense Endeavor. And you can find them on Facebook and Instagram at Wade for FOR Women, Wade for Women. And then, I got all kinds of other projects. Another thing that you guys should probably follow that I'm about to start doing is called Modern Gun School. And they've been in business. Yeah, they've been in business since the 70s. They've got a really kick-ass master gunsmith out of Pennsylvania that does a lot of their curriculum. But my buddy Zeke Stout, who used to host Master of Arms on the Discovery Channel,
oh wow,
has recently come in as a partner in this, and he stood up all of their online learning. So you can go to Gun. So if you ever wanted to learn a trade, now's the time.
Oh yeah.
So I enrolled this week in Modern Gun School, and so now I'm going to go for my gunsmithing certificate. And you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram at Modern Gun School. But man, this is the coolest thing I've seen come out of the gun industry in a while.
Yeah.
Because gunsmithing is becoming a lost art. This school is not expensive. It is not expensive. And you can do it at your own pace. A lot of people, you got 2 years to make it through the basic gunsmithing curriculum. A lot of people get it done in a year at your own pace. They send you, there's videos that you have to watch. They send you a binder of curriculum, and then you have, I think, 4 or 5 actual projects that you have to do. And so I really wanted to do it because I have, especially with me having access to a world-class gunsmithing department.
Right.
At Texas Gun Experience, I really wanted to get this done, now. And I'm just super proud of Zeke and those guys and what they've done over there.
Well, awesome. You and I've talked before, to go back to the training aspect, about sending my wife to you, and maybe now that I know that you do this mobile training stuff, maybe we could get a class where we have 6 or 8 of the local women around here, or 10 or 50 or whatever.
Sure.
Maybe we could get something hooked up sometime.
Yeah, I've been doing that since we've been quarantined. You take the proper safety precautions, but I went down to, I'm making house calls. I'm doing online training.
Awesome.
Excuse me. I just smelled this candle that's burning.
Bless
next
you.
to me.
Bless
Some
you.
of it, some of it got in my
You got
nose.
the corona?
I know, I got the
Hey,
corona.
I want to
but
give you.
I've gone.
I want to give you a good Instagram follow for you. A customer of mine out of Florida somewhere. I forget where he is, but he's called the Pew Pew Channel.
The Pew Pew channel. All right.
PEW channel. He's all about. He's impressive with weapons, and also just man-to-man combat too. Does all kinds of really cool stuff. You'll love his stuff, I'm sure.
There you go.
Perfect.
He's one of the cooler. I'm
I'm
not huge in the gun Instagram world, but I do know that he's got some top-notch content out there.
Well, and this is really good because I'm seeing that he does a lot of dry fire personal training, which is basically what I'm doing right now for people. I'm going over a lot of these, especially women that have come in that said, okay, I'm about this gun, I don't know how to use it. The only thing that you can't prepare somebody for, which is not even really that big of a deal, doing dry fire exercises is recoil management.
Right.
And you can to a certain degree, but obviously they need to experience it. But man, I've been making house calls for the last 2 weeks, going over there and teaching people how to use their firearm, and showing them, sitting down with them on the laptop and showing them what gear to buy, and that kind of stuff. So never underestimate the dry fire drills.
Outstanding. Well, Jerah, we appreciate your time.
Yes.
It's kind of a weird times we live in. We'd have rather done this in person, but with technology, we can make it happen, I guess.
We sure can. Yeah. Absolutely.
I
love talking about this stuff, so I never, anytime.
Yeah, we can tell you're passionate about it, and we appreciate you sharing your passion with us. It's really cool to hear it from you.
Well, let me know when it's all ready to go, and I'll give it a share.
Hey, that'll work. We'll do that. Hey, Jerah, thanks for your time. We'll shoot you the link when it's up, and have a good evening.
Miss Jerah Hutchins, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
There she goes. That's it, dude.
That's it.
That's Jerah. She's gone.
Yep.
We just talked some guns.
We did. That was a first. I guess that was the first real gun-heavy episode we've had here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we've been talking to her for a while.
Yeah.
Not on the show, but we've been discussing it.
It's funny. I've been friends with her for several years, and I don't recall how we met. I think it was a social media thing.
Yeah.
And then she had a mobile cleaning service for a while. So she came, and I went to work, and she came and picked up my deer rifle. I have a 6mm, an old 6mm, and it had never been cleaned, I don't think.
Yeah.
I was not a big fan of that. And anyway, it was funny because I was in Richardson, and she pulls up, and I pull out this deer rifle in the middle of work, and hand it to her. And I'm sure people were like, "What is happening
here? What is
going
on here?"
Yeah. She's super passionate about it. She's she does that. I wanted to get into it a little bit more, but we kind of got sidetracked. Her annual dove hunt, it's a big deal. A lot of people show up for that. It's good times. She's definitely a knowledge base there.
Yeah.
So
clearly,
anyway.
she knows what she's talking about.
It's going to be interesting times to see keep seeing these people buying guns. The lefties that we were talking about that had no interest in them before. So we'll see over the next few months if that continues.
Things are looking different.
They are. It's a different time. I think the one good thing that may come out of all this is people will kind of have an eye on preparedness and just self-defense.
It's a reality check, I think.
It was. I was watching the Rogan Weinstein episode, and they kept calling it "We've been napping."
Yeah.
And we just woke up.
Yeah. Well, Russ, was it Master Sergeant Russ, or what was he?
He might be a senior Master Sergeant now. We may have
Russ
demoted him.
I don't want to demote him, but Russ nonetheless. He
Yeah.
said some of his best advice, I think, was just do a inventory of what you have on hand and see how far it'll get you. It won't get you that far.
Right.
Most likely.
Oh, yeah.
And
Absolutely.
people are starting to realize that, and that's a big kick in the pants.
It is.
So.
All right. Well, Friday evening, maybe we'll crack a whiskey or something.
Yeah, it is Friday.
Yeah.
Friday here on the Siren.
It is.
What's the second biggest city in Texas?
Dallas.
Yeah.